College, my mother repeated, eyebrows raised, coffee cup halfway to her lips. You think we're paying for that? Her tone wasn't angry. It was amused, the kind of laugh people give when they hear a bad joke. I remember the exact time. 6:47 a.m., the kitchen clock's red digits glowing in the half-light. The radio hummed with the morning news. Bacon sizzled on the stove, and my acceptance letter lay open on the table like a wounded bird. When your parents laugh at your dreams, they don't expect you to rise higher than their pride. But one day they'll learn what silence can build. Watch till the end, this story will stay with you. I'd stayed up all night reading that letter. Congratulations. We're thrilled to offer you admission. Running my fingers over the embossed seal until the paper felt warm. It wasn't just a college acceptance. It was the first door I'd ever opened for myself. But to them it was an inconvenience. My father didn't even look up from his newspaper. We can't afford to throw money away on a degree that'll never pay back, he said. He folded the page neatly, aligning the corners. He always did that, precision for everything except feelings. I tried to stay calm. It's a scholarship, Dad. Tuition's covered. I just need help with books, maybe rent. Mom laughed again, sharper this time. And food? And bills? And what, a car too? No, sweetheart. The world doesn't hand out pity prizes. You'll learn. The word learn stuck in my chest like a thorn. I didn't cry. I just stared at the tiny crack in the linoleum between us. That floor had seen everything. Burned dinners, slammed doors, my first steps. Now it was watching me lose something I hadn't even begun. I'll figure it out, I said quietly. My voice didn't shake. Mom's laughter stopped. Maybe she heard something different in my tone, something that didn't beg or plead. She set her cup down. You'll regret walking out on your family's wisdom, she said. Maybe, I replied. Or maybe you'll regret walking out on mine. That night the house felt like a stranger's. My posters were gone. Mom said she cleaned up. My childhood trophies sat in a cardboard box labeled donate. She'd already erased me before I'd even left. I packed silently. Jeans, notebooks, the small silver necklace my grandmother left me before she passed. It was the only thing of value that hadn't been pawned during one of Dad's business emergencies. I tucked it under my collar where it always rested against my heartbeat. At 11:13 p.m. I stood by my bedroom door listening to them argue in the kitchen. She'll come crawling back, Dad said. Of course, Mom answered. They always do. They were talking like I wasn't still in the house, like I'd already vanished. Maybe that made it easier for them. Outside, rain began to fall, slow and steady. I waited until their voices faded, then slipped out with one duffel bag and an envelope of cash. $86 from tips at the diner where I worked weekends. The porch light flickered as I stepped off the last stair and I whispered to it, "Stay on for me just once." It didn't. The bus station smelled like coffee and diesel fuel. A woman in her 50s sat beside me, knitting, humming softly. I wanted to tell her everything, that my parents thought I wasn't worth the cost of a textbook, but I couldn't. My throat burned too much to speak. Instead, I pulled out my acceptance letter again, reading the same line over and over until the ink blurred. You've been selected for our scholarship program in business administration. Business. That was my secret weapon. They didn't know I'd spent the last year teaching myself accounting from old library books. My boss at the diner, Mr. Parker, had shown me how to balance ledgers, how numbers tell stories that people can't hide. I understood money in a way my parents never would, and I promised myself I'd make it the language of my revenge. The bus hissed as it arrived. I climbed aboard, pressing my forehead to the cool window. Our house was barely visible through the rain, the porch light still dark. I thought of all the nights I'd sat at that table helping Mom with bills, Dad with loan forms, and realized I'd been useful only when they needed me. Now that I dreamed bigger than their boundaries, I'd become disposable. Fine. I'd become unforgettable instead. The ride took 3 hours. The farther we went, the lighter the air felt. At a rest stop, I bought a cup of coffee so bitter it made my eyes water. I stared at my reflection in the metal lid. Tired eyes, chapped lips, 20 years old tomorrow. My birthday gift to myself would be freedom. When I reached the small college town at dawn, the streets were empty except for newspaper trucks. I dragged my duffel to the dorm office, but the clerk said my room wouldn't open until Monday. I spent 2 nights sleeping on a bench near the library, hugging my bag and praying it wouldn't rain again. No one from home called. Not once. On the third day, I found a job at a 24-hour diner 2 blocks from campus. The owner, a gray-haired man with grease-stained hands, looked me up and down and said, "You show up on time, you eat for free." It wasn't kindness, it was transaction, but it was more than I'd been given before. I worked the late shift, studying during breaks. Some nights customers left half-eaten pies or spare coins. I collected both, grateful for scraps. When exhaustion hit, I remembered my mother's smirk and pushed through. Every betrayal became fuel. Months passed. I mailed home a Christmas card just to see if they'd reply. They didn't. A neighbor later told me Mom had shown it to her friends, laughing about how I wanted attention. That night, I ripped the return envelope apart and threw it into the dumpster behind the diner. But inside the shredded paper was a spark of something sharper than pain: determination. I stopped waiting for love to save me. I started saving myself. One winter evening after closing up, Mr. Parker asked me to help balance the accounts. "You've got an eye for this," he said. "Ever think about business as more than just survival?" I told him about my major, about the scholarship, about my plan to start small, maybe an accounting service for local shops. He nodded slowly. "Good," he said. "Just don't let anyone take credit for your work. People will if you let them." Those words carved themselves into me. By spring, I'd moved into a shared apartment with 2 other students. Cheap place, peeling wallpaper, but it was ours. I pinned my acceptance letter to the wall beside my bed, right under a handwritten note: "Prove them wrong." Sometimes, late at night, I'd imagine walking back into my parents' kitchen, diploma in hand, just to see their faces. But then I'd shake the thought away. Revenge wasn't a scene, it was a process. Quiet, patient, precise. And I was learning precision fast. The day I received my first straight-A report, I stood outside the campus fountain, letting the cold water mist my face. I wasn't crying, just breathing differently. For the first time, the air didn't feel borrowed. I wrote a letter to my grandmother's old friend who'd always believed in me. I didn't tell her everything, just that I was okay, working hard, doing fine. She sent back a small card with one line: "Keep your records clean. One day you'll need them." I didn't know what she meant then. But later those words would save me. The summer before graduation, I visited home unannounced. The house looked smaller, the paint chipped. Mom opened the door, startled as if seeing a ghost. "Well," she said finally, crossing her arms, "you didn't starve." "No," I answered. "You taught me how not to." Dad barely looked up from the TV. "You done with that college nonsense?" I smiled faintly. "Not yet. But I'm close." I didn't stay for dinner. As I left, I noticed the porch light flicker again. Maybe it was coincidence, maybe not. But I felt something shift inside me, a sense that I no longer needed that light to see my way. Back on campus, I started keeping detailed journals. Every job I worked, every dollar earned, every document signed. I didn't know why I was so careful then. I just knew someday someone would question what I'd built and I wanted proof. That hidden advantage became my armor. The last night before graduation, I sat in my tiny room surrounded by textbooks and receipts. Outside, students were celebrating, music echoing through the halls. I wasn't celebrating yet. I was planning. I looked at my grandmother's necklace in the mirror, still shining, still mine, and whispered, "They'll remember this face one day." Then I folded my gown carefully over the chair, turned off the light, and slept like someone waiting for dawn. Not as a dreamer, but as a survivor sharpening her first weapon: silence. That silence stayed with me long after. It became my armor. Every morning when the alarm rang at 5:30, I'd whisper to myself, "Keep moving. Don't look back." The small town where I'd built my new life smelled of coffee, exhaust, and ambition. The diner sat on the corner of Maple and 3rd Street, a red neon sign flickering open, even when the sky still wore its last layer of night. The same place where I'd worked through college had now become my first post-grad job, at least until something better came along. Mr. Parker, the owner, had grown to trust me. "You've got a head for numbers," he'd say, tossing me a stack of receipts. "Most people count pennies. You count patterns." He didn't know how right he was. The world after college didn't feel like freedom. It felt like survival again, only this time I was prepared. I rented a small apartment above a hardware store. The ceiling leaked when it rained and the radiator hissed like an angry cat, but it was mine. I kept my college diploma framed above the kitchen sink, a reminder that even broken places could hold victories. I spent mornings waiting tables, afternoons handling bookkeeping for small businesses, and nights studying online courses in finance. Every dollar I saved went into a plain envelope labeled someday. Someday I'd start my own firm. Someday I'd build something that couldn't be taken from me. But someday wasn't just a dream, it was a plan. One afternoon while I was balancing the diner's accounts, I overheard two regulars talking. "You hear about that hardware store? The owner's behind on taxes again," one said. "Yeah, he'll lose the place if he doesn't fix it," the other replied. That night I knocked on the landlord's door. "I can help you clean up your books," I told him. "For half what you'd pay an accountant." He hesitated but agreed. Within a week I found 3 errors in his filings and saved him nearly $5,000. He paid me in cash and word spread fast. By the end of that month 3 more small shops had asked for my help. It was slow, quiet growth, the kind my parents would have dismissed as luck. But it was skill. Hard-earned skill. One evening while walking home I passed a local bank's bulletin board and saw a flyer. "Financial assistant wanted, entry level." I tore it down, folded it twice and slipped it into my pocket. The next morning I stood in front of the mirror in my thrifted navy blazer. It smelled faintly of someone else's perfume, but it looked professional enough. During the interview, the branch manager, a woman in her 40s named Denise, glanced through my resume. "You've worked at a diner and done some bookkeeping," she said. "What makes you think you can handle finance?" I met her eyes. "Because I've lived it," I said. "When you've counted coins to survive, you learn the value of every number." She stared for a long moment then smiled. "You start Monday." The first few months were rough. I was the outsider, the waitress turned banker. Some co-workers whispered about my small-town manners, or how I brought my own lunch every day. But I didn't care. I was learning everything: client accounts, loan structures, even how to read the patterns of spending that revealed who was desperate and who was dangerous. Denise became my quiet mentor. "Always document everything," she told me once. "When people owe you, their memory gets creative." I took that advice to heart. Every transaction, every file, every signature, I kept copies in my home drawer. I didn't know it yet, but that habit would one day save my entire career. By year 3 I'd been promoted twice. I wasn't rich, but I was steady. I'd built a small circle of trust. People who respected hard work, not family names. My parents hadn't called, written, or shown up. Sometimes I wondered if they even knew where I lived. Then one Sunday morning I found a letter slipped under my apartment door. No envelope, just folded paper. "We heard you're doing well. We're proud of you. Maybe we could visit soon." No signature, but I knew the handwriting. My mother's. I stared at the words until the paper blurred. "Proud of you." The phrase felt counterfeit, like a forged check. I didn't reply. Instead, I folded the letter neatly and placed it in the back of my someday envelope. I'd keep it as evidence, not of love, but of timing. People only reach for you when they see you rising. Months later, Denise called me into her office. "You ever thought of starting your own business?" she asked casually. I blinked. "Why?" She leaned back in her chair. "You've got the drive, and half our small clients already ask for you by name. I can't give you ownership here, but out there you could build something." I didn't answer right away. The idea scared me. Me, the girl who once slept on a library bench owning a business. But it also thrilled me. That night I opened my someday envelope and spread the contents across my kitchen table. Savings, documents, small victories. Then in a clean notebook I wrote: Phase 1, independent consultant. Phase 2, firm. Phase 3, freedom. The first months of self-employment were brutal. Clients delayed payments, taxes drained my savings, and the silence of my one-room office felt heavier than I'd imagined. I'd work late into the night, the hum of the streetlights outside blending with the scratch of my pencil. Some days I questioned everything. Was I foolish to walk this path alone? Would my parents be laughing if they knew I was struggling again? But then I'd remember their kitchen, their smirks, the way they'd said, "You'll learn." I had learned. I just hadn't finished teaching them yet. One of my earliest clients was a widow named Mrs. Jenkins. She ran a small flower shop and kept all her records in handwritten notebooks. "My husband used to do the books," she said softly. "I just sell the roses." I spent weeks organizing her finances, finding overpayments and missed deductions. When I told her she'd overpaid nearly $3,000 in taxes, she burst into tears. "No one's ever helped me like this," she whispered. That night I sat in my car outside her shop for a long time. For the first time, success didn't just mean proving my parents wrong. It meant helping people they would have overlooked. It gave me a new kind of power. Purpose. Business grew steadily. I printed simple flyers, offered free consultations to local stores, and slowly built a reputation for honesty and results. I never lied, never cut corners, and I never took advantage of anyone's ignorance. Then one day while reviewing an account, I found something that stopped me cold. It was a tax return for a new client, a small construction company. The name on the paperwork? My father's. At first I thought it was coincidence. But the address matched, the same street, the same house. My parents had opened a company, and their books were a disaster. Hidden debts, inflated expenses, late fees. They were drowning, only they didn't know I was the one looking at their numbers. I didn't confront them. Not yet. I filed the discovery away quietly, marking each irregularity. Part of me wanted to reach out to warn them. But another part, the colder part, wanted to see what they'd do next. They taught me independence. Now they'd see what it looked like. As the months passed, I kept an eye on their company from afar. They took loans they couldn't repay, wrote checks that bounced, and signed contracts they didn't read. I watched it unravel piece by piece, a slow-motion replay of every careless word they'd ever thrown at me. Denise, now my business partner, noticed my quiet mood one afternoon. "You all right?" she asked. "Just watching a lesson teach itself," I said. By my mid-30s, I had what I'd dreamed of, a modest but thriving financial consultancy. The sign on the door read Harrison & Cole Accounting Services. I never used my last name. It wasn't something I wanted clients to associate with me. Sometimes, though, I'd imagine my parents seeing that sign. Would they recognize the woman behind it? Or would they only see the daughter who stopped calling? I didn't know. But I knew this. Every late night, every broken nail, every scar from scraping life together piece by piece had built me stronger than any privilege they could have handed me. I had built a life from scraps. One receipt, one paycheck, one sleepless night at a time. And though the wounds had scarred over, I could still feel the faint sting beneath the surface. A quiet reminder that some debts can't be paid in money. Some must be collected in silence. That thought stayed with me as I sat in my new office, the afternoon sun casting gold stripes across my desk. The air smelled faintly of printer ink and lavender polish, clean, controlled, nothing like the house I grew up in. My firm had just landed its biggest contract yet, managing the finances for 3 local hospitals. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady, honorable, and mine. The phone rang almost constantly now. Clients, accountants, suppliers, all needing something from me. But when my assistant poked her head in that day and said, "There's a couple in reception asking for you. They say they're your parents," my hand froze on the pen. For a moment I couldn't move. My chest tightened, the air suddenly heavier as if the walls had shifted closer. I hadn't heard that word, parents, spoken aloud in years. They stood in the lobby like strangers dressed for Sunday service. My father in his pressed gray suit that didn't quite fit around the middle. My mother in a pastel dress that tried too hard to look expensive. She clutched a leather purse close to her chest the same way she used to hold grudges. "Sweetheart," she said when she saw me. The word didn't sound like love. It sounded like rehearsal. I didn't smile. "You found me." Her lips trembled into something that looked like relief. "Of course we did. You're all over the papers. Local businesswoman wins county contract. We're so proud of you." Proud. The word again. It hit like déjà vu. My father nodded stiffly. "You've done well for yourself." I gestured toward my office. "We can talk inside." Once the door closed, silence filled the room, thick, awkward, almost humming. My mother scanned the space like a tourist, fingers brushing the picture frames, the books, the small brass nameplate that read Claire Harrison, managing partner. "This is lovely," she said finally. "I always told your father you'd do something important." I watched her carefully. "No," I said. "You told me not to waste money on dreams." Her eyes flickered, the smile tightening. "We were just being practical. Times were hard back then." "Times," I said slowly, "were always hard for you except when it came to pride." My father cleared his throat. "We didn't come to argue, Claire. We came to make peace." Peace. I repeated. Or connections? He hesitated. That single pause told me everything. They explained how their new business, construction of all things, was struggling. Just a few late payments, my father said. Nothing serious. I knew better. I'd seen their books months ago under a different name. I knew the debts, the bounce checks, the unpaid taxes. But I kept my expression neutral, pretending to learn this for the first time. My mother leaned forward, voice softening. You're in finance now. Maybe you could look over our situation? Give us some guidance. There it was, the real reason they were here. Not pride. Not peace. Profit. I folded my hands. You came all this way to ask for help? She smiled weakly. Families help each other. The irony nearly made me laugh. They left an hour later with polite smiles and forced hugs. My office door clicked shut behind them, and I stood still for a long time, listening to the faint echo of my mother's perfume fading from the air. I thought of calling Denise, my partner, to tell her what happened, but I didn't. I didn't want pity. That night I worked late, staring at spreadsheets until the lines blurred. My reflection in the dark window looked tired, older, stronger. I whispered to it, they'll come again. I didn't know how soon. 2 weeks later, an invitation arrived, gold-trimmed, handwritten, family dinner. Let's reconnect. I almost tossed it away. But curiosity, dangerous, familiar, made me go. Their house looked the same from the outside, except for a new mailbox with the name Harrison Construction printed in bold letters. Inside, the furniture gleamed, the smell of roasted chicken filled the air, and laughter came too easily. Mom greeted me with open arms. You came. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't, I said honestly. At the table, my father poured wine, his tone smooth. We've missed you, Claire. You've been so busy with your empire. I forced a smile. It's not an empire. Just a small firm. He chuckled. Small or not, you're doing better than anyone we know. The flattery rolled off like oil on water. Halfway through dinner, the conversation shifted. My mother leaned in. There's something we wanted to discuss. A little investment opportunity. Nothing risky. My heart went still. There it is, I thought. They explained their expansion plans. Buying new equipment, hiring staff, needing a temporary loan to bridge the gap. Just 50,000, my father said. You'd get it back in no time. I set my glass down gently. And why me? Your family, Mom said again, smiling. Who else can we trust? I laughed then, quiet, genuine laughter that startled them both. Trust, I said. That's rich. They didn't appreciate the irony. My father stiffened, my mother's smile wilted. The rest of dinner was silent except for the clink of silverware. When I left, she followed me to the porch. Claire, she said softly, don't hold on to old wounds. We were just doing what we thought was right. I turned to her. And I'm doing what's right for me now. Her face tightened. You'll regret shutting us out. Maybe, I said, stepping into the night. But I doubt it. After that evening, the calls began. First from Mom, then from unknown numbers, then from their business partners. Apparently, they'd used my name in a few conversations, implying I'd committed to helping. I had not. One morning, Denise burst into my office holding a folder. You might want to see this, she said grimly. Inside were legal documents. Letters of credit, partial contracts, even an agreement draft with my forged signature. My parents' company had presented them as collateral for a new loan. I felt the room tilt slightly. My pulse hammered in my ears. Are you going to press charges? Denise asked. I didn't answer. I couldn't, not yet. Instead, I called my parents and told them to meet me at the office. They arrived looking nervous, not guilty. That made it worse. I saw the papers, I said quietly. You used my name. My father's tone hardened. It's business. Everyone does it. We were going to pay it back. That's forgery, I said. You could lose everything. He shrugged. You wouldn't turn on your own blood. Blood. The word felt poisonous. I looked at them both. These people who'd given me life but never kindness. I thought of every late night, every humiliating moment when I'd begged for support and how they'd laughed. I stood slowly. You should leave, I said. Before I do something you'll regret. My mother's voice cracked. Claire, please, don't be cruel. Cruel? I whispered. You taught me what that means. They left without another word. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at my desk with the documents spread before me, tracing the forged signature with my finger. The loops were almost perfect. My handwriting copied from old birthday cards, probably. Part of me wanted to destroy everything to let it go. But another part, the part that had learned to survive on silence, knew better. I locked the documents away. Evidence. Then I opened my grandmother's old necklace box, the one I kept on my shelf, and tucked a copy inside. She'd always said, keep your records clean. One day you'll need them. I finally understood what she meant. Weeks passed. Their company's debts grew, creditors circled, and whispers spread about forged loans and unpaid taxes. So I said nothing. Then one afternoon a courier delivered an envelope to my office. Legal notice. My parents were suing me, claiming I owed them $5 million for educational investment and financial support. I sat very still as I read, my fingers trembling slightly but my face calm. The office around me buzzed with phones and chatter, but I heard none of it. A faint smile tugged at my lips. They'd finally crossed the line. I looked out the window at the city I'd built myself in. Every brick, every hour, every sacrifice. They taught me independence, I murmured. Now I'll teach them accountability. That night I called Denise. We're going to court, I said. She hesitated. Against your own parents? Yes, I replied, my voice steady. It's time. As I hung up, I felt that old silence rise again, not empty this time but full. Full of everything I'd endured, every scar I'd turned into strength. For years I'd built my life piece by piece. Now it was time to defend it. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the calm surface, a quiet fire began to burn again. The night I told Denise, we're going to court, I didn't sleep. I lay awake in my quiet apartment, staring at the ceiling as rain tapped the window like a metronome. Every drop felt like a countdown. The case wasn't just a lawsuit, it was war dressed in paperwork. When dawn came, I made coffee strong and black, then sat at my kitchen table reading the complaint again. My parents are suing me for $5 million. Even in print it felt unreal. I whispered it aloud just to hear how absurd it sounded. $5 million. For a child they once told to figure it out alone. Denise handled the early strategy meetings. We'll counterclaim for defamation and false representation, she said, flipping through folders. But Claire, this is going to be public. You okay with that? I nodded, though my stomach knotted. They made it public the moment they filed. She studied me for a long moment, then sighed. Just promise you'll stay calm when they take the stand. They'll provoke you. They've been doing that all my life, I said. I'm used to it. The first pretrial hearing was small. Just lawyers, a judge, and the three of us sitting across a long oak table. My mother wore a pearl brooch, my father a new suit. They looked composed, almost regal, as if this were some family reunion instead of a legal battle. When the judge asked for opening remarks, their attorney stood. My clients, he began, supported their daughter financially through her early education, providing resources that directly led to her business success. We're simply seeking fair compensation. I almost laughed. Resources? The only resource they'd ever given me was trauma. Our lawyer, Ms. Reyes, stood calmly. Your Honor, the evidence will show the opposite, that my client's parents abandoned her financially, then later engaged in forgery to access her credit and business reputation. My mother's lips tightened. My father's jaw flexed. For a brief second his eyes met mine. There was no guilt there, just disbelief that I dared to fight back. The official trial began 2 weeks later in a downtown courthouse. I still remember the smell, old wood disinfectant, and the faint sweetness of coffee from the vending machine outside the doors. The benches were full. Reporters, curious locals, even a few business colleagues who couldn't believe what they'd heard. When I took my seat beside Ms. Reyes, my palms were damp. The clerk called the case, voices echoing off marble walls. My mother sat across from me, pretending to dab her eyes with a tissue. My father whispered something to her that made her shoulders stiffen. Then the questioning began. Their lawyer paraded photographs of my childhood. Birthday parties, school awards, my father smiling beside me. These, he said to the jury, show the loving parents who invested in their daughter's future. Ms. Reyes leaned in and whispered, "Don't react." I didn't. I just stared at the photos, remembering what came after each one. The fights. The dismissive words. The Nightside studied by flashlight because they'd refused to pay the electricity bill. The courtroom couldn't see those parts. But soon they would. When it was our turn, Ms. Reyes called me to the stand. My heart pounded as I raised my right hand and swore to tell the truth. The microphone crackled when I spoke. "Ms. Harrison," she began gently, "can you tell the court what happened when you were accepted to college?" I nodded, keeping my voice steady. "They refused to help. My mother said I should learn the hard way. My father told me I wasn't worth the investment." Murmurs rippled through the room. I kept going, describing the nights I'd worked, the scholarships, the diner shifts. "Everything I have," I said quietly, "I earned alone." Her next question cut deeper. "Did your parents ever provide financial assistance later, during your career?" "No," I said. "They didn't call, didn't write, didn't help. Until my business succeeded." "And what happened then?" "They came back." The jury leaned in. My mother looked down. My father's jaw twitched. Then Ms. Reyes brought out the documents, the ones I'd kept hidden for months. Copies of forged contracts, false signatures, loan applications. She placed them on the evidence table one by one, her voice calm and precise. "Can you identify these?" "Yes," I said. "They're loan papers submitted under my name without consent." The courtroom went silent. My mother whispered something to their lawyer, but he motioned her to stop. My father's face turned gray. When the judge asked if I could prove forgery, Ms. Reyes projected the digital overlays. My actual signature versus the forged ones. Even from the back row, the differences were clear. The documents were traced from old greeting cards, Ms. Reyes explained. Cards gifted to her parents years earlier. Someone in the audience gasped. My mother's voice cracked suddenly. "We didn't mean to." Her lawyer shushed her, but it was too late. The damage was done. During recess, I stepped into the hallway to breathe. My legs felt weak, my heart unsteady. Denise was waiting there with 2 cups of coffee. "You did well," she said softly. "It doesn't feel like winning," I admitted. "It feels heavy." She nodded. "That's what truth does, it weighs more than lies." We sat on a bench in silence, the echo of footsteps bouncing down the corridor. A janitor passed, pushing a cart that squeaked rhythmically. The ordinary sounds made the moment feel strange, almost surreal, like the world was still moving while mine was suspended in place. When the court reconvened, their lawyer tried to salvage what he could. He painted my success as a shared family achievement, twisting my independence into arrogance. "She wouldn't be here without them," he said dramatically, "without their early sacrifices." I leaned toward Ms. Reyes and whispered, "Ask for the bank records." She nodded and stood. "Your Honor, we have evidence of financial withdrawals made from an education trust originally created by the defendant's late grandmother. Withdrawals made after the plaintiff reached adulthood." The clerk distributed the statements. Each transaction bore my parents' signatures. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Is this accurate?" Their lawyer hesitated. My father shifted in his seat. "That money was ours by right," he muttered. "No," Ms. Reyes said. "It was hers." By the 3rd day, the tension in the courtroom had changed. The reporters no longer looked at me with curiosity. They looked at me with quiet sympathy. My mother avoided eye contact altogether. My father had stopped taking notes. He just stared at the table, tapping his pen in slow, uneven rhythms. When the judge finally called for closing statements, the air felt electric. Their lawyer spoke first. "My clients may have made mistakes," he admitted, "but this case is about misunderstanding, not malice. Families fight, but they also forgive." Then Ms. Reyes stood. Her voice was steady, deliberate. "This isn't about forgiveness. It's about accountability. Ms. Harrison's parents didn't just fail to support her. They attempted to profit from her success, using deceit and forgery. Justice isn't vengeance, Your Honor. It's recognition of truth." As the judge reviewed the evidence, my pulse quickened. Each second stretched like an eternity. The courtroom was so still I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner. My mother's hands trembled in her lap. My father's eyes flickered toward me, pleading but not apologizing. Finally the judge spoke. "Given the overwhelming evidence of forgery, misrepresentation, and attempted fraud, the plaintiff's case is dismissed. Furthermore, the court orders an investigation into the misuse of the educational trust." The words hit like thunder. My parents sat frozen. The attorney beside them slumped slightly, defeated. I didn't smile, didn't gloat. I just exhaled slowly, feeling something unclench deep inside me, a tension that had lived there for decades. But even as relief washed through me, another feeling followed close behind: grief. Not for them, but for what could have been, if they'd chosen love over greed. Outside, the air was crisp. Reporters surrounded us, microphones flashing. Someone shouted, "Ms. Harrison, do you have a comment?" I paused at the courthouse steps. "Only this," I said softly. "Truth always costs something. But lies cost more." Flashbulbs went off. Questions flew, but I kept walking until I reached the car. Inside, Denise handed me my phone. "You've got a message," she said. It was from an unknown number. Just one sentence. "We didn't mean for it to go this far." I stared at the screen, the words blurring. Then I locked the phone and set it face down. Some messages don't deserve answers. That night, I sat by my window watching city lights blink on one by one. Below, people hurried home, carrying groceries, laughing, living ordinary lives untouched by betrayal. For the first time in years, I felt the quiet again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was clean. Tomorrow there would be headlines, gossip, consequences. But for now, there was only the steady hum of the city and the faint glint of my grandmother's necklace in the lamplight. I touched it gently and whispered, "You were right, Grandma. Records matter." The truth had cut deep, deep enough to wound but also deep enough to heal. And though the battle was over, I knew the silence that followed would speak louder than any verdict ever could. The truth had cut deep, deep enough to wound but also deep enough to heal. Yet that night, as the city glowed beneath my window, I realized healing could be quieter, and far more dangerous, than revenge itself. The following morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. News outlets wanted statements. A local channel even requested a live interview titled, "Daughter Wins Landmark Case Against Parents." I declined every single one. My victory didn't need applause, it just needed peace. I brewed coffee, opened the blinds, and watched sunlight pour across the kitchen counter. My grandmother's necklace shimmered faintly, catching a ray of light. For years I'd worn it like armor. Today it felt like proof that she'd been right all along. Truth protects even when it hurts. By noon, Denise stopped by. She placed 2 folders on my table and gave me that half smile she reserved for bittersweet news. "The trust investigation's wrapping up," she said. "Court ordered restitution. They'll have to sell the house." I nodded. "I figured." Her eyes softened. "You sure you don't want to claim any of it? You're legally entitled." "No," I said quietly. "I don't want their house or their money. I just wanted the truth on record." She hesitated. "There's one more thing. Their lawyer reached out, wants to meet privately. He says it's personal." I exhaled. Of course he does. Guilt needs an audience. So I agreed. We met the next evening at a small cafe near the courthouse. I sat by the window, hands wrapped around a cup of tea when he arrived, tie loosened, expression weary. "Miss Harrison," he began softly, "I know you have no reason to hear me out. But your parents, they're not taking this well." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean losing?" He shook his head. "They're losing everything. The house is already listed. Creditors are calling. They feel cornered." For a moment I felt a twinge of something. Was it pity? Habit maybe. Old instincts die slowly. He continued, "Your mother wanted me to tell you. She never meant for it to go this far." I stirred my tea slowly, watching the ripples swirl. "That's what everyone says when the damage is done." He nodded, resigned. "Still, she asked me to deliver this." He slid an envelope across the table. My name written in her delicate cursive. I didn't open it right away. I waited until I was home, sitting by the same window that had witnessed every sleepless night since the trial began. Then carefully I unfolded it. "My dearest Claire, you've made your point. You always were stubborn just like me. I don't know where we went wrong. Maybe we wanted too much. Maybe we envied you for becoming what we couldn't. Your father won't admit it, but he's broken. Am too. We just didn't expect you to fight back this hard. Still, I hope one day you'll forgive us. If not for us, then for yourself." It wasn't an apology. It was a confession disguised as sentiment. I folded it once, then twice before dropping it into the drawer beside the old case files. Another record for the archive. Forgiveness wasn't something you gave because people asked. You gave it when your heart was strong enough to carry the weight, and mine wasn't there yet. Weeks passed. My company grew. New clients came, drawn not by the headlines but by my reputation for integrity. The world moved on. But I didn't forget. Some nights, when I locked up the office and stepped into the cold air, I'd glance across the street at the courthouse, its windows glowing faintly under streetlights. That building had seen me unravel and rebuild. Denise noticed the quiet that had settled over me. "You're not celebrating," she said one evening as we closed the books. "You won." "I didn't win," I replied softly. "I survived." The next turning point came unexpectedly. A letter arrived from the county clerk, routine follow-up from the case. At the bottom was a small note from the trust investigator. Educational funds recovered. Beneficiary reassigned per court order. Attached was a check, not large but symbolic. The remainder of the trust my grandmother had created decades ago. Money that should have paid for my education back then. I stared at it for a long time. Then I endorsed it to the local Women's Scholarship Foundation. In the memo line I wrote, "For the ones told they're not worth it." It wasn't revenge. It was release. A month later I received another unexpected call, this time from the hospital. "Miss Harrison," the nurse said gently, "your mother's been admitted. She listed you as her emergency contact." I froze. Why would she? I stopped myself. The nurse didn't owe me answers. "I'll be there." The drive felt endless. Every mile peeled back layers of memory, the laughter, the fights, the silences that followed. When I walked into the room, she looked smaller, fragile, her skin pale against the white sheets. Her eyes fluttered open. "Claire." I nodded. "I'm here." She tried to smile. "You came." "Someone had to sign the papers," I said gently. Her gaze dropped, shame flickering across her face. "I didn't think you'd ever want to see me again." "I didn't," I admitted. "But you called." For a long time neither of us spoke. The monitor beeped softly in the background. She reached for my hand, hesitant, trembling. I let her hold it, but I didn't squeeze back. "You were always stronger than me," she whispered. "I thought breaking you would make you stay." My throat tightened. "You could have asked me to stay." Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't know how. It wasn't redemption, not even reconciliation, but it was truth at last. When she was discharged 2 days later, I helped arrange the paperwork, then left without saying goodbye. On my way out, I passed the waiting room and noticed my father sitting alone, staring at the floor. He looked older, his shoulders slumped, eyes empty. For a moment, I saw not the man who'd mocked my dreams, but a man who'd lost his reflection in his own mistakes. He looked up. "You did what you had to." I nodded. "So did you. Was it worth it?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I said. "Because it finally stopped." He nodded once, eyes glistening. Then I turned and walked away, each step lighter than the last. Months rolled by. My mother passed quietly that winter. The news reached me through a lawyer. No letter, no funeral invitation, just a simple statement. Estate closed. Assets liquidated. There was no will. No mention of me. And somehow that felt right. I took the day off work, drove to the cemetery where my grandmother was buried, and placed a single white rose beside her headstone. The air was cold, crisp, almost cleansing. "I did it my way," I whispered. "And I didn't become them." A breeze rustled through the trees, scattering leaves across the path. For the first time I felt like she was listening. That evening I returned home and poured myself a cup of tea. The city outside hummed softly. No phone calls, no noise, no battles waiting to be fought. On the kitchen wall hung my diploma, my business license, and a photograph of my first office. Beneath them I pinned one last thing. The scholarship letter from the foundation thanking me for the donation. I reread the closing line. "Your contribution will change lives." It already had. I sat by the window again, the same seat where everything had started and ended. The street lights flickered, and somewhere below, laughter drifted up from the sidewalk. Life was still happening, loud and messy and beautiful, but inside there was only quiet. Not the silence of loss. The silence of peace. I thought about everything I'd lost, everything I'd reclaimed, and realized revenge had never been the point. It was about closure, the kind that doesn't roar or burn but settles, soft and certain. The world wouldn't remember my court case or my pain. But I would remember what it taught me, that survival can be its own kind of justice. I turned off the lights, the necklace cool against my skin, and whispered to the dark, "I'm done fighting." The room stayed silent, but somehow, it felt like the silence was answering back. Justice didn't come with noise or applause. It came quietly when I finally stopped needing to be heard. If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button. I share real, emotional stories about strength, justice, and the power of never giving up. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight?